We're gonna go over the Himalayan star towers. I'm not sure really how I'm gonna do this yet, except for screen grab it. So let's just go ahead and get it started here. I guess I'll just chime in as we go through it. I'm not totally positive this is part of, the buried star forts. Like if this is, in Mongolia, they had these towers that would have been maybe a water service or an air service or some type of service, electrical service per household or if this was just to feed the oxygen into the ground for the the pneumatic redoubt connections. Like if these would have been the air intakes for the underground pneumatic tube, the hyperloop style. Anyways, we'll get into that later. Let's just get ahead and get started.
Explorers dubbed it Shangri-La and the roof of the world. A land of breathtaking beauty and impossible terrain. A place where maps still have blank spaces and outsiders rarely venture. Here in this ancient realm of countless mysteries, a woman became determined to solve one of them. Hundreds of spectacular stone towers rise over the remote valleys of the Himalayas. Some in ruins, many still intact. Built perhaps near the time of Genghis Khan and the fierce Mongol conquest of Asia, the tower's history has been lost, forgotten to the ravages of time. Who built them, when and for what purpose? These were the questions that captured utterly the imagination of the Renaissance woman, Frédéric d'Aragon.
As I was in camp searching for snow leopards, I'd come upon the most incredible structures I'd ever seen, standing alone in the middle of nowhere. As I began inquiring about them, I discovered with amazement that nothing was known.
Even the locals know little about the towers. Indeed, in this ancient land, only monks and pilgrims venture far from their home villages. Most have never seen the towers, and few are even aware of them. Consulting with Western Chinese scholars, Frederick, who speaks Mandarin and some Tibetan, found that the experts knew little about the towers, other than they had been reported in 4 regions of the Sino-Tibetan corridor. Among the Kiang, in Galrong, in Minyak, and further west in Kongpo. Frédéric d'Aragon would not quit until she knew the story of these remarkable skyscrapers. This is the account of 6 expeditions undertaken by a lone investigator. The shots you see of Frédéric were taken by her using a tripod, or by her driver or friends who at times came along on the journey. It was in 1998 that Frédéric had first come upon the towers. Spread across a region roughly the size of Texas, the towers inhabit an area that gives the word remote a new meaning. The inaccessible valleys of Kham were long closed to foreigners because of the aggressive character of the inhabitants. Until very recently, there were no roads at all in this mountainous terrain. Even today, access is difficult, due in summer to heavy rains and landslides, and in winter to snows and avalanches.
And then from then on, it depends of the weather, it depends of the rivers, it depends of a lot of things. You get stuck. Whenever night comes, that's where you're going to stay.
Frédéric sets out for the Min Mountains, where at 4,500 feet are found the Qiang, an ancient people.
Altogether, I think there are still about 100. I've seen about 100. But I was told there were more towers in some totally very, very remote areas, like you had to be for 3 days on horseback to get there. Altogether, there must have been at least 600 or 700 towers.
To not have these mapped is a travesty.
Modern Qiang are descendants from an ancient group of tribes who lived around Lake Kokonor and were already mentioned 3,000 years ago in Chinese inscriptions. Some of them migrated south, and by the 2nd century they were famous for building tall towers.
Now watch
By the
how
9th
these women
century,
are
other
dressed.
Qiang had settled along the upper Yellow River and were to create the Minyak kingdom.
They've got their
The
jewelry
Qiang still
on.
speak distinct
They've
yet
got the
related
head
dialects of an
covering.
ancient language that predates Tibetan. But since the early Qiang had no written language, the story of how and why these towers came to be has been lost in time.
It
Today,
looks like
most
War Down,
Qiang
Star
also
War
speak
Down
and generally write Mandarin Chinese. The local people are surprised yet delighted at Frederick's interest in their old towers. This woman explains that her tower was partly destroyed by an earthquake long ago. She invites Frederick to see for herself and meet her husband, the village wise man.
Right there, that one is perfect. I mean,
This tower seems also to have burnt, leaving no wood that can be dated by a carbon test.
I wouldn't so much say that it was burnt as the you know, like Paul Cook talks about the rendering. The rendering is all fallen away.
这个条路以前拿来吃什么？知道吗？
打仗。哦，以前嘛，
And we'll find the swastika
封建
here.
嘛，这是。说
In
封建的
abundance.
时候，别个来进来
Okay,
了嘛。
right here. Look what we got over here on the left. You know, Paul Cook shows a lot of you know, these little doorways that are like, you know, built into the mountain kind of thing, like into the foundation of whatever is underneath Malta. Like those doors right there are the kind of things that, you know, are stuck into these things. So I don't know if, you know, they were ripping apart the, you know, stuff like that and then inserting it into the walls underneath the starports. And then, like, you know, so they were disassembling this and then, you know, with, you know, building out the inside of that thing, they were taking the parts of this that were fixable or still working, and they were putting it into the walls. That's the way I see it, kind of like the way we used, you know, barnwood today, or barnwood doors today. We will use it for countertopping, or, you know, they will CNC it for the inside of like a kitchen cabinet setup, kind of like that. You know, a recycling of the materials was going on. You know, for that, I think this is one of the original ones that you know, it since people have been in this thing for so long. You know, throughout them, you know, even forgetting how to write, even though we will see that they have to have had some type of Arabic writing, or, you know, Kufic style writing, you know, which we're not being told about, or which China has beat out of them. I'm not sure.
这嘛，他们就交流上去。
那地下有个吧。
The woman points out a nearby village where Frederick might find old beams that could help
I mean,
date
see,
the
you see the
structures.
terraced land, and there's star towers in it, and there's always water nearby, and it looks like, you know, I mean, obviously that wood isn't been there very
Frederick
long,
travels
but you
alone
can
with her
see
driver, Xiao Shu.
the
This
star
clever young
redoubt
Chinese
tower
driver will eventually
like,
double up as an assistant cameraman.
bridge
Frederick
thing,
sees a tower in a
where there
village that
probably
was
would've
badly
been a
damaged by
train-
earthquakes.
where there probably would have been a train or a trolley line, or, you know, some kind of track that would have gone across that waterway right there, right? Not originally just 3 bundles of sticks, you know, tied together with, you know, some wire from the Viet Cong, or the, you know, the the nationalist socialist society for China or whatever the fuck it's called. You know, like these are definitely, these seem to me to be some type of, you know, I mean, like, look at this. Worn out star forts, star cities, you know, that have been hit with, you know, weather. You know, like this would have been, you know, built on top of the star, the base of the star. I mean, like, look how far down the water is, right? And it's cut like perfectly through this, you know, valley, right? It looks like it would be, you know, originally when it was maintained, when it was populated. I mean, these whole sides of these mountains were probably covered in, you know, star fortification, like, or star. I don't like to call them star forts. You know, like bastion, like I'm not even sure really star cities. You know, it would have been filled with that kind of architecture. You know, now we've got whatever we've got on top of them now, which it seems to be like colonialism, you know, wooden buildings put up. But originally it would have been, you know, this masonry. I don't know if you want to call it rubble masonry. Some of it, you know, some of it is not rubble masonry. Some of it is, you know, it's well, I mean, this stuff is at least 500 years old.
Makes the presence of tall towers a mystery in itself.
And there's nobody around anymore that knows how to fix this stuff, really. You know, nowadays they just go gather some sticks and prop some stuff up or whatever. But the kind of the knowledge that seems to have been lost, you know, from them hiding out in these mountains and being so, you know, out there, that nobody's been able to really reach them or document these things. So, you know, there's not obviously going to be anybody repairing them since the population's not there.
It is raining. Unaware of the danger, Frederick enters the tower to try and obtain a fragment of wood.
So I entered that tower without any fear, even if it looked a little bit shaky, and I just started sawing the wood. And as soon as I started sawing the wood, part of the wall collapsed. And as a matter of fact, when I went back there only 6 months later, the whole tower had collapsed.
Lesson learned. One should never enter the towers when it rains.
Yeah, I mean, that's just like a no-brainer. But, I mean, like, look at that right there.
This beam.
I mean, it's... I mean, this is old.
Safely located outside the tower at its base. Cannot have been replaced, and so must be as old as the building.
Like, all that seems to be left is...
The carbon test will in fact give but the time when the wood was cut. A close approximation as to when the tower was built.
A lot of this wasn't rock, it was wooden smeared...
Khan is well watered by the monsoon.
Mud smeared
and is
wood
far greener and richer than most of Tibet.
In some of it, not all of it.
For centuries, this region was a no-man's land, regularly invaded and sacked by warlords.
Notice this whole mountainside is terraced. See that? And then it even has what appears to be there would have been a bridge of some sort that would have gone from this star group or this star tower group across the valley to the other side of the valley here, and because you can see where it zigzags out or kind of points out, or there would have been a bastion across there, or whatever you want to call these things. I'm not even sure what to call them yet. I've not seen anybody else talk about these yet, or anybody else find them. I've just, Could
this possibly explain the presence of so many towers?
I've even mentioned these in the Discord of starports and stuff, and there is, you know, even from Mike or Victor, you know, I did not get any response that they even barely, I'm not even sure knew of these towers. So me getting any more info on these towers is my goal here, because I'm trying to find out if they are part of, you know, if they were part of industry, or if they were part of, you know, like the water function of if they are part of the starport infrastructure that would have been water, like moving water, or if they would have been air intakes, or you know, you know, like for firing bricks per se. You know, like they would have been like towers for smoke, or to, you know, for geothermal purposes.
One may wonder why all these towers are bunched together, and what is the significance of the thin ridges along their sides.
Clearly, these people are not entering in through windows like this. This is nonsense. They're going to tell you this, that these things were made to crawl up into, to shoot arrows out of. That sounds like complete bullshit. Because, I mean, these little windows aren't even big enough for really people to crawl in and out of. And not only that, but without a way up to them, or because a lot of these things aren't even found with wooden collapsed structures on the inside to say that they once had wooden structures on the inside holding them up. Seems like the only thing that was actually being wooden inside of them would have been the scaffolding that was holding it up, not like a stairway structure on the inside holding these things up that would have been in place. It seems that it would have been more of, you know, you put your logs in there for you know, like modern little stick houses. You know, we have, you know, little toothpicks inside the walls that have render on the outsides of them called drywall, and then they put plaster on that. Well, these would have been bigger things than those, and they would have smeared mud or bricks inside of these larger beams. And that would have been what was holding up these towers. There wouldn't have been stairs, I don't think, inside these things. And I'm trying, and it seems that everything below the ground or at ground level seems to have been all pretty much washed away. You know, or is covered in mud. So, you know, we're not even, like, if these are starports, we're not given any angles throughout this thing, I don't think, to see the rest of where it would have, you would have been able to tell it was a starport or Star City, because it would have had points on it. I think these towers are the only thing that's left of the you know, this if it is a part of a starport like system, like if it's held wires or a copper thing up top, you know, as or a windmill possibly, you know, or something that spun, like, you know, like a windmill, you know, with the Archimedes screw on it for water, you know, like Antwerp, how they, you know, reclaim land out of there with the windmills and the starport, you know, infrastructure in there. It's all made to move water so you can flood the fields with it, or you can reclaim land that you build a wall and then you suck all the water out with an Archimedes screw that's propelled by a windmill. So, you know, these all seem to be in, like, they have valleys. They're like collapsed cities, and the towers the only things left, and so it looks like they're just randomly sticking out of the mountains, which would have probably have just been a sprawling city kind of thing, or like buildings attached to like the outside of the rock of the mountain kind of thing. Very very star fort leveled, tiered, kind of covering these sides of what I'm pretty sure seem to be man-made canal systems.
As a local explains, we Qiang build ridges on the walls as reinforcements against earthquakes. The more, the better. Such reinforcements have beyond doubt helped the towers stand up to the many tremors. The colorful Qiang are a nearly self-sufficient community. Today they are all farmers, tilling terraced fields that yield an abundant harvest in spite of the steep slopes. Some can afford satellite dishes that will enable them to watch television.
Very poo-poo.
The Qiang are not
South
Buddhist.
America life.
They venerate their ancestors in certain trees. They consider white stones sacred, and a white sheep is essential to their rituals. Like the Tibetans and the related Tamangs of distant Nepal, they claim to be descended from the union of a monkey and a mountain-dwelling she-demon. These fine towers are not...
I think that narrative got put in there during their, supposed, basically detachment from society, post whatever reset happened that left them out there. Like hills fall on me kind of thing, Armageddon kind of thing going on. That would have set them apart, and left them like in the background right here. I mean, that's probably a building. It's not a mountain. It's probably the biggest building that was in there, and all that's left are these towers. I mean, these towers could actually even just at the tops of them at one time had just held, train track or a track system or something, or a gondola or something, so that it was easier to get from one side of the base of these mountains to the other, or across the tops of them, across the Himalayas as a traveling system. Whatever they're going to tell us here is going to be nonsense, though. But I mean, like, look how long they've been inactive. I mean, they've got entire grass and trees growing out of them now. So how long does it take to make a city or civilization disappear? Like, how long does it take a tree to grow through, a foundation, or through one of these things? So I mean, like, these things can't be that old. Because I mean, look at the vegetation around it, like tree-wise. I'd say 300 years old.
Are not as tall as those once built by their ancestors. As the locals explain, after being defeated by the Chinese, the Qiang had to take refuge in the mountains and were forbidden by a Chinese emperor to build towers more than 50 feet high. The hardest part of Frederick's research so far is to find all the finger towers.
Okay, notice back there. Okay,
by a Chinese emperor to build towers more than 50 feet high.
Alright, the reason why I think that they weren't allowed to build towers 50 feet high is because of the fact that they could utilize water and out bones. Alright, so obviously there's a steel pipe in the thing up here, so there was probably a water wheel in one of these buildings or something, or obviously these people have running water. That's just, to get that out of the way. Um, this would have been, your original. Okay, cover this in mud, and then, look at these windows for Paul Cook. You've got windows that are kind of like reset into the geopolymer, which this in fact is not geopolymer, or if it is, all of whatever's leached away, and then so we're left with this brick looking, or these pebble looking, like unhewn stone kind of things that would have been stuck together with render, I guess. I'm not sure how all this was put together yet, or if these were sandbags. But yeah, clearly there's a pipe system here into this thing. Even though they probably don't have running water in that thing today. Obviously, it had that is some type of utilities line, whether it was electricity or water, doesn't matter.
The hardest part of Frederick's research so far is to find all the finger towers, as they have never before been charted, mapped, or even filmed. Frederick pursues a quest in the valleys inhabited by the Gyalrong. Every valley has a different dialect.
This is interesting to learn about their language, because like if you look at a map right there, how close all these places are, it sounds like basically what happened in Europe, or even with the Welsh language and Ireland, England. The next village usually, they were secluded enough that they didn't even really, clans didn't, if you weren't part of that valley, you didn't understand what the next valley was saying, because of generational, them not crossing back and forth enough to, as language progressed, like how we reverse words and make, like, the word recession, for instance. I'll leave it at that.
People from one valley cannot understand people from the next. Most get by with Kamke, a Tibetan traveler's language, or with Chinese. At 9,000 feet, set along a rich plain at the meeting of two valleys, the village of Songan proudly flaunts 4 towers.
Of course, they've got to show the de-escalation of this place as, the rickety bridge that's just across there now, as opposed to what these magnificent towers probably were. And I'm starting to really think that this was a gondola system that would have taken you through all these cities. Or, because look at the terrain, it's too tough. It's retarded to build roads here, because every time it rains and the cliffs are so, or the terrain is so steep that everything's just gonna wash away. And with the man-made water channel at the bottom, they're obviously harvesting the water below for power. And that's probably what all these little buildings actually used to be, was part of the electrical infrastructure, be it steam or, just hydraulic. Because up until, they've started trying to put motors that were fuel burning, like with Ford and stuff, these engines are too heavy. Combustion engines are too heavy, and they don't get nearly as much power as these steam-driven, water-driven, natural type of engines. Once you start putting these combustion engines and stuff is when everything, they degraded everything to where we don't even use airships. Now we have these things called airplanes that suck and crash way more. They don't float in the sky anymore. Or they do, but they don't.
Two of them are freestanding and star-shaped with 8 points each. Amazingly, they're taller than modern 15-story buildings. In spite of prayer flags nearby, they are not religious structures. What then could possibly have been their purpose? Tibetan folklore tells us of a legendary kingdom whose queen lived in a very high tower. Could this be the magical place? Are these young...
This seems like more infiltration, of the swine herd, into nonsense.
women the descendants of the woman of legend who once ruled these valleys?
Jesuits coming
This
in
tower
and
can now
telling
be
them
accessed by newly
they don't
built
have
outer
history.
steps that lead to the door set 20 feet high above the ground. Beneath the door, the tower is
The
solid
door-
stone.
The door is 20 feet high in the sky. That says to me that's like a services entrance into this thing, whatever it was. And at the bottom of it, gondola. I'm just telling you, I see gondola written all over this stuff.
The floors have been restored. The windows seem to be made for defense and are too few for this tower to have been a residence. Ladders once linked the platform-like floors. Inside, the space is extremely narrow, as the walls are very thick.
Those just shoot arrows at it. I'm not buying it. It probably had some sort of metal thing in those skinnier ones.
The flat dirt roof has collapsed and grass grows over the remains.
And it would have had a big cable through here.
What
it
were
would
these
have been for
towers built
electricity.
for? Here, their Chinese name
Perfect
is
gondola
Feng Hu
system.
Tai, which means beacons. But if they were built as signal towers, why would you need more than one? The entrance to this tower is nearly 3 stories up. To explore the inside, Frederick must somehow find a very long ladder. The army in nearby Markham agrees to lend her the region's only tall ladder. The officer then refuses that Frederick climb up herself, but finally gives in when she agrees to use a rope.
What is the rope gonna do? You yank her down? Clearly, like that right there looks like the foundation line or the corner of a building. Probably the original room entrance into this structure. Trying to do like a Mary Poppins out the window look.
Here the walls are black and charred. Carbon tests will reveal that these window beams are only 50 years old.
Yeah.
This indicates these towers had been renovated. One can see that the door has been also modified. Samples
To
from the
get in
tallest
there, I don't
tower
think those doors
indicates
were-
that
those
it dates
windows were
from the
originally in
13th
there.
century. What was life like here when these strange towers were built?
Imagine that whole
It was near
thing,
the time of
no
Genghis
trees
Khan's
there,
conquest
just
of
all
Asia,
buildings like this,
when the
with render
Mongols had
all over
invaded
them.
Tibet. Being 700 years old, the towers are likely to have been put to different uses at different times, making it even more difficult to find their original purpose. Today, the children sing in Chinese.
I mean, like
Who
right
knows
there,
what
you
their
can
language
almost even
was here 7 centuries ago? Today, the children sing in Chinese.
Okay, here you can almost even see in the trees, those black holes in the trees here. If I can. see how this could be a gondola system. You know, down to, you know, the city down here. This right here just totally screams, you know, it was once a wall or outside wall to a building that's just, yeah, I mean, without regulation on this river, which is, you know, notice how that thing's like right at the apex of the, like where this river looks like it could possibly split into a Y. So this place is in a perfect position to be a water intake. So I mean, making it, you know, a perfect place to generate hydroelectric, you know, and work these machines that probably were a part of this as a gondola system. I mean, that's what I'm getting the feeling of. Get this out of here. Okay, so I mean, you can even see the terraced, you know, system that this was, you know, to hold retain a wall retainer, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. And there was probably even once a road that went here, and there appears to be, you know, even, you know, once you got through here up to here, there's probably a building here, you know, another stop, and then or motor or whatever, and then you would have gone the rest of the way to up here. Yeah, but look how remote these things are. You'd have to have something on the top, so one of these mountains or hills or whatever this is, if these are, you know, like pre-Noah's flood, humongous Nephilim buildings, I don't know, you know, or giant pyramids or something, or I don't know how populated this place was or wasn't, but I mean, it seems pretty clear that what we're looking at here is all man-made. And I'm not getting off the gondola system. Not yet. We'll see how that works out.
Who knows what their language was here 7 centuries ago?
Probably Arabic.
Frederick hears of 2 towers further downstream in a nearby village. They might supply some answers. As in Songam, this freestanding star-shaped tower was erected in a village, set upon a rich plain where 2 rivers meet. Could this be a clue?
Whenever I heard of another tower, my heart would beat faster. I was hoping that the yet unseen tower was finally going to reveal its mystery.
As in the Kiang villages, many houses here have buttress-like ridges against earthquakes. These ridges must be efficient, for the octagonal tower stands complete in spite of the frequent tremors, unlike the adjacent rectangular tower, which is severely damaged. These monks offer to guide Frederick to the Tumba region, where they claim rise over 100 towers, some the tallest in Kham. Monks often travel and mingle freely with laymen. From the onset, the weather is bad and rapidly gets worse. Soon, the water has gone completely wild, sweeping the road away,
Yeah, it looks
very
like
nearly
there's building
taking the car
across
with
the
it.
structure. Yeah, I mean, that's the
Frederick
structure
has
right
to
there.
turn back and find an alternate route to Tamba.
Yes. Why do you think there aren't any roads that work down here? Because they were all up there. I mean, right here, look at this. Gondola system. That's what I'm saying. I mean, you can even see the terraces here.
At long last, a rainbow greets her as she reaches the enchanted valley of Tamba. Here,
I mean, how else do you get all the way up to the top here? You know, you got your gondola system that would take you all the way to the top. And it's, I mean, right here even looks like a building, like a foundation of a building. Not to mention that, like all of this area looks like, you know, there were buildings inside of all that before it was overgrown. Like, I mean, how long does it take to erase a city or society? How long does it take a tree to grow?
here there is no central village. Dozens of majestic freestanding giant structures dwarf the houses. The tallest is around 160 feet. Everywhere towers rise up, hugging the steep slopes. Could the towers be directly related to the region's wealth? 13 centuries ago, the Chinese Tang Annals described a rich kingdom of women in this area. Could this wealthy valley be the place? Beneath the towers, a rich harvest of wheat. Could the towers have been mere silos? But then why build the doors so high off the ground?
That is nonsense.
Abundance of water and a surprisingly warm microclimate at 7,000 feet above sea level has made this valley one of the richest of Kham. The land well deserves its Tibetan name, Shar Gyalmot Saporong, the hot valley of the Eastern Queen. Here there are 2 harvests a year, one of wheat and one of corn. The wheat is here being flayed in the wind to separate the chaff from the grain. There is a time to sow and a time to reap. Abundance here, it seems, breeds happiness, and work is always accomplished to the tune of a song. Plowing starts anew while the harvest is winnowed in the summer wind and stored away, but not in the towers. The grand size and elegance of all these houses speak of a rich egalitarian society, one in which each family may well have been responsible for its own safety, rather than depend upon a single chief. Were the towers built for defense? Certainly the houses were not. They are far too exposed and vulnerable. This tower, marked with a Buddhist sign for wind, is adjacent to a house and appears in good condition. It is the first we see associated with a religious symbol. Maybe it is still being used, but the tower is empty.
I mean, like right here, it looks like, the only reason why the windows are in here would be to have a gondola wire through it. As as opposed to it being side by side, maybe this gondola, the wire went underneath and then held it above, or to the side, through this, to the side of the tower.
Carbon tests of a fragment of an old beam will reveal that this tower was built 630 years ago, give or take 70 years.
I don't buy any of their dating systems. I don't care. I mean, sure, that kind of puts it at, what I would consider, the golden age. And these people clearly still dress to be in a golden age type of attire where they even work in their jewelry. They all cover their heads. It does, they say they don't have a written language and stuff, but I think that the dress and everything else, it kind of shows through to that mentality of no war. Why else would you go out in your Sunday's best every day, if you were scared for being run up on by Mongols with guns or arrows or whatever nonsense. Dye in your rice paddy with your gold and your, so that you can just be, trade. This place was probably a huge agricultural, fiefdom kind of thing, maybe. I'm not sure, but I'm not getting off the fact that these are gondolas.
It was built practically at the same time as those of Songan, but with a different technique, as here much more mortar was used to secure the stones.
Man, look at this little window here. What's that all about? What's this all about? What's this perfect little brick? I mean, those are just too geometrically perfect. For me to say that this was for when you shoot arrows out of that. Get out of here.
Many towers are built away from fields and houses, so they could not have been primarily silos or defensive structures. Not have been primarily silos or defensive.
All right. I mean, he says it right here, plain and simple, that these are not, great. It appears there would have been one right here, there's one here. It appears that they probably went all the way up this ridge here. And once again, it's a gondola system to take you to the top or to the next hill or mountain or over the mountain or over the valley. Maybe they were living up top up here and, they rode this thing down into the, I don't know if this would have been populated or farmed at the time. Now it seems to be being farmed. So
or defensive structures. One folktale claims that they were simply towers of pride, arrogant symbols of their owner's importance, built at a time when Kam grew rich from trade with Mongol-ruled China. Legend has it that the base was built at the birth of the sun, and a new story added at each of the boys' birthdays. Maybe because here earthquakes are rare, most of the towers are square. All the more reason to study this lone, large, star-shaped tower.
我现在无聊无觉没有，我想个5点半到6点可以，现在有很少的人，没有一次去。谢谢。走走。好，拜，我没有本包。
Fruit is found in great abundance in the area.
一个黄酒的头嘛。
OK， 谢谢你。对，很认真，我知道。
The young man explains that the towers belong to no one, unless they are backed against the house. Since this tower is near his home, he feels free to climb into it. Difficult to access, it will nevertheless give up its secret. A small piece of wood. The sample would prove to be yet once again 790 years old.
很有意思，我的家，对，这个把家有很有意思。对。
拿来，他是。
很好，对，所以
你妹妹好大。
对，可以，这个很好。
现在在哪儿读书啊？
The swastika, found in many ancient cultures, represents for the Buddhists the symbol of permanence. The young woman of the house prepares hot breads prior to leaving for a festival in the valley. This harvest festival extends far back to before Buddhism reached the valley in the 11th century. Today, Tamba stands at an uncertain crossroads between two worlds, that of its secretive past and its future in modern China. Prayer flags decorate every place where evil spirits might lurk. This bridge crumbles under flags in honor of the Lungta, the wind horse, symbol of chance and good fortune. In all the Tamba area, there once stood over 260 towers. Approximately 70 are still standing, giant and amazing structures unaffected by centuries of earthquakes and upheavals. These young people from Galrong cheerfully repair the road by hand in the same way their ancestors built the hundreds of monumental towers without modern tools or machinery.
I'm not buying that. I don't think that's true that there was no... I think that those were towers of machinery. Just because it's all rusted and gone away and turned back into dirt. And they don't remember it, and they've returned to a life of, the feminine side of, tilling to the earth, the moon aspect of life.
The people of Sopo had informed Frederick that all around there were towers in practically every village, often adjoining old castles. To her surprise, while naming the villages, they ran off most of the names of the 18 kingdoms of Galrong that some scholars believed were legendary. Perhaps they were not legendary after all. Frederick's research continues as she heads south, searching for towers in remote villages often inaccessible by car. The mountains get steeper. Frederick, deprived of her helper Xiao Shu, who is affected by high altitude, sets out alone carrying the heavy tripod. An old woman acts as guide.
Masonry, it looks like
The presence of a fort close by could indicate that the tower served a purpose other than defense.
It would have been where the gondola would have stopped at.
Deep ravines and shaky bridges lead to distant villages, and yet more towers.
I mean, like, look, you see what that bridge is built on? They put those sticks on top of the older
At
structure.
Pati, a great ruined castle stands in the village, far from a lone square tower.
Look, these are little skyscrapers here. I mean, like, look at this thing. Look at this place. You know, here's the gondola drop-off.
This castle is formed by two typical slant wall buildings on either side of a tower. The space between the three buildings being filled to consolidate the whole.
That's a fucking castle.
The women spin and chat quietly in the shadow of the land's former past. Once these people were herders, and they've retained their nomad custom of wearing all their finery every day, wherever they go and whatever they are doing. Three towers rise on a distant crest, along the trail leading to the home of the Minyak. One of them resembles a star with 13 points. The tower is in ruins, yet one can still see high up an alignment of white stones, symbol of good luck. According to legend, the intricate design with 13 corners was drawn on the ground by a Tibetan woman with a ball of string. In gratitude and amazement, the local king married her for the feat. The passing herds suggest another possible purpose for the towers. Could they have been rallying points for nomadic herders on their annual migrations? A secure place in which to store the possessions they could not take along with them.
Since Minyak have roamed this land for 7 centuries, these nomads must be the descendants of the people who built the towers.
These nomads are Minyak, whose territory today lies south of the Galmorong district. They were once part of the powerful Minyak kingdom that controlled the western portion of the Silk Road for 300 years until its destruction by the Mongols in 1227. After the destruction of their kingdom, they then moved southwards to where they are now found. Today's Minyak still speak a language related to the language of their lost kingdom.
The incredible mystery is, how come people who did not even have a written language
Okay, yeah, how could they not have a written language? Okay, well, first off, they were on the Silk Road originally. They say if the Silk Road was destroyed 800 years ago, okay, well, the Silk Road would have had a written language. They would have had, roads and buildings and, all that stuff. Cities, city centers. It was the hub trade, and there's a star in America too that would have been the hub trade here. And it's literally, shaped, the Silk Road is a Star of David. Or, a, what do they call the triangle that's, a whole, as above, so below kind of, but it's in like a 4-dimensional kind of aspect. Whatever that triangle's called. And it, you can rotate it and it makes a Anyway.
Had such sophisticated constructions. How were they able to find a way to build very tall towers that could also resist earthquakes?
The black yak-haired tents are the only homes of the nomads as they move about ever in search for better pastures. While some Minyaks are herders, others now live in villages. They often intermingle and share their produce, one exchanging butter and meat for the barley and peas of the other. The nomads consider their hard life as much more pleasant than that of the sedentary farmers who tilled the land. They prize their freedom and are quite well off, owning large herds of yaks. The nomads travel up into the mountains to cut trees, but they then haul down into the valleys, where tall trees are few.
So they can make those crappy bridges instead of just go ahead and stack up rocks. And
Frederick has come to realize that it is in the wealthiest valleys that the towers are likely to be found.
Yeah, look at this. This looks like a gondola station.
The rich agricultural valleys of the Minyak at 10,000 feet harbor spectacular manor-like farmhouses. For the Minyak are both famed warriors and master builders.
45 to 35 to 45 degree cliffs. That seems like construction.
This covered
for a
bridge is
gondola.
another fine example of the local architect's talents. Yet here, if horses can cross, cars cannot, and Frederick must proceed on foot.
Yeah, because they, I mean, look, there's geopolymer, there's rock. I mean, like, for them to leave it in that state is because they want to leave it in that state. They don't want people
These
out
twin
here.
towers are truly fantastic beyond belief, to use the words of the first European to see them in 1880.
Yeah, I mean, those are amazing. They're still in really good shape. They probably, were in use for a lot longer. And if you could move, bales like this down a wire, or onto ships, like it just seems to me more like what's going on here. So that they can move tons of agriculture.
They are assembled of uncut
24/7
stones,
on a rail
some
line,
of great
or
size,
on a
perfectly
wire.
stacked with very little mortar in between.
It is an unbelievable achievement to have built such monuments, and that they have resisted hundreds of earthquakes. The builders were people with no written language, with
I don't
no
believe that.
machines, and with only basic techniques. It
That's a
just
lot.
shows how resourceful human beings are.
Each of the 16 sides is identical within a few inches.
This is probably poured concrete. And they had a render on the outside that
This is the
fell
season
off.
for harvesting, and the peas and barley are stored in the upper floors of the houses. The homes are spacious, yet here again the towers seem to proclaim arrogantly the wealth of the community.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, it's got, I mean, like, if you can't tell me that's not like a motor of some sort right there. Now they spin it for good luck. That thing used to be probably a brushed motor, the center of a brushed motor. Or, it can spin on its own and be a atmospheric collector, like just like a Corona motor.
As usual, the ground floor is used as a stable.
You just put a couple wires on the outside of that, and you got, whatever voltage.
Having
is
already
spinning
made
that
friends
thing.
with the villagers on a previous visit, Frederick has no trouble finding volunteers to help her in her search. The two towers are in near-perfect condition. They appear modern, yet carbon dating will reveal that they are fully 850 years old, built more than 4 centuries before the Dutch settled Manhattan.
Before and after the Star Force was already there. Look at it, there's a bunch of mud in the bottom of it. They're falling off render. See how rickety that is. That's built in afterwards.
The windows here would seem ideal for firing arrows, as they allow an archer to stand in them, unlike some of the windows of other towers examined.
Still not buying that whole narrative. That probably had a big old electrical conduit wire exposed.
These dome-shaped clay pots are in fact funerary tormas, offerings of clay, often mixed with the ashes of the dead. Could this mean that the towers had a religious significance linked with the dead?
This gets almost kind of graphic right
Tradition
here.
has it that the Minyak cut up their dead upon this stone slab,
It's not a
therefore
stone,
contradicting
that's
the
geopolymer.
possibility of the use of the towers in this ceremony.
Watch how
Sky burials are
aggressive.
the most ancient
it
of
takes a
Tibetan
lot of work
rituals,
to get rid
probably
of
hailing
a
from ancient Persia. The body is cut up and served to the
skeleton.
vultures, thus returning it into thin air, into the ether, one of the key components of man, along with earth, water, and fire. This ceremony has rarely been filmed and occurred while Frederick was studying the towers. These images, filmed with discretion, are a unique record of one of Tibet's most sacred rituals.
They're about to hack this body apart. See that? That's a human body right there.
These are the tools that will be used to cut up the corpse. After praying for a fruitful reincarnation for the deceased, the monks retire as the vultures close in for their sinister funerary feast. A special cast of men, the Shempa, cut up the corpse.
It's very emotional. The family is not present during the sky burial. Only the friends of the family are there. And when I asked them if I could film it, first they really didn't want to. But the people from the monastery were good friends of mine. And I told them I was just interested in their culture. I was not going to film the actual dead body, so they let me watch it.
Aren't you fighting over the human body?
I didn't personally watch the body being cut, but I just didn't film it.
The skull is crushed and the bones mixed with tsampa, roasted barley flour. Nothing, absolutely nothing must remain.
I would like to be disposed in such a way. I'd rather be eaten by vultures than being eaten by worms anyway. They take you away in the sky. I think it's very poetic. Some of me would fly over those beautiful mountains.
The body has now entirely vanished into thin air, and the mystery of the towers remains complete. Frederick pursues a search in the nearby monastery.
It's almost like they've resisted the outside world so much that it's kept.
As the monk explains, this book written in gold, a volume of the Kanjur, confirms the practice of sky burials in this valley for over 670 years. But there is no mention of towers associated with the ceremony.
手抄本大藏经。
It's because of the gondolas, probably.
To further complicate matters, Frederick learns of similar towers 400 miles to the west in Kongpo, part of the Tibet Autonomous Region. Once again, she sets off to see for herself. Kongpo is a land of great alpine forests, where in spite of the high altitude, macaque monkeys are found in large numbers. Situated at 11,000 feet, Basum's Blue Lake is famous since it is often mentioned in Tibetan mythology. Little is known about the origins of the people of Basum, who now speak Tibetan, but whose dialect is distantly related to that of the Chiang languages. Once again, freestanding towers are found in a region whose dialect is related to the Chiang languages. Here also, the people claim to be the descendants of the 6 children of the monkey and the mountain-dwelling Shidim. The children of myth were hairy and had a tail that they lost when they learned to plant cereals and become farmers. Most women wear a medieval-like chasuble of wool. But more elegant are the ones made of silk lined with monkey fur. In 1935, the explorer botanist King de Moord counted more than 200 towers in Kongpo. Today, only a dozen are standing, most of them in ruins. This tower is in good condition. It looks similar to the ones seen in the east, but a closer look will reveal many differences. The stones are small and the mortar more abundant. The openings are also small, too small to have been of much use.
You put some rebar through there.
The door is located at the base,
line.
making it easy to break into the
Or a
tower.
gondola.
This tower is not star-shaped, but has 12 90-degree angles, the result of interlocking rectangles. Carbon tests will reveal the Kongpo towers to have been built between the 10th and the 14th centuries. This makes some of these towers over 1,000 years old, the oldest dated by Frederick. In between her 6 expeditions, Frederick in Paris and then in the United States analyzes her findings, cross-checking the history of the various regions where the finger towers are found. Slowly, the puzzle falls into place. The carbon tests come up with a startling revelation. Except for the more recent, smaller Chiang towers, all the finger towers are ancient, built 600 to more than 1,000 years ago. All the finger towers are found in regions that have no written language and have no written records of their history.
It was a peaceful place. They were probably riding
Until
around
recently,
on gondolas.
neighbors considered them barbarians. Little did they know about the sophistication of the architecture to be found in these unreachable valleys. Nearly a millennium after they were built, the towers of the Himalayas have finally given up their secrets.
Agriculture, whatever,
The towers,
into
like
the
the people,
city
vary
for
from one region to
manufacturing.
the next.
So
there is no simple
you take
answer
the
as
people
to their
out of it, you
purpose.
throw a gondola up,
The
and you
Chiang
can run that
towers
thing all
have
day
thin
long.
fins and are part of fortified villages and were essentially defensive
you run
structures.
the natural resources, on the machine. I mean,
The
it's just like
square
an
and
assembly line
multi-sided towers
today.
of the Tumba valleys could be used for storage, but were essentially symbols of prestige. Built at a time of unprecedented wealth, when each family or village headman wanted to outdo his neighbors. The Kongpo towers were also towers of prestige. Extraordinarily, some of them were erected more than a century before the famous skyline of square towers built for the same reason in San Gimignano, Italy.
They don't even know what they were built for in Italy. Are you talking about
Because they
Bologna?
were erected on fertile plains where trade routes met, the 8-pointed star-shaped towers of Songam, Baisha, and the amazing twin towers of Remede and Minyak were without doubt arrogant trading posts.
Far better than books, these amazing towers tell us of the pride and grandeur of the people who once inhabited this magic and sacred land called
So is
Ka.
that Tartar Towers?
As a result of this research, these towers are being considered for an inscription on the UNESCO World Heritage List, recognition they very much deserve.
The music, when they get throw the drum in there, it sounds very Celtic, like, or, you know, Saxon, like, woodsy kind of, or primal, I guess you'd call it.